Who here watched the Super Bowl? Who here was glad with the results? Who here has some money on the game? Yeah, quite a bit.
Not like, I think I won like 100 for the Chiefs winning.
Thanks. Were you like betting online or betting like with people you knew?
My family like put in bets for all of us, so we all each had a bet.
Okay. What'd you think of the halftime show, you guys?
Decent.
Decent? Not bad. Brianna?
A little bit more toned down than last year's.
Yeah, you can kind of see it was a bit toned down. All right. Work breakdown structure. Ryan and John. Want to talk a little bit about your breakdown?
Sure.
All right, let me pull up your. I like this. First of all, I like this. Why you did it on one sheet, one page. Kind of clear to understand too. So as we talk about even, as we get into lean systems, like, well, okay, that applies to businesses, it applies to service industries, products, manufacturing, production. But also think like anything you're actually presenting, right? Are you also adapting sort of what we're learning here to streamline things, right? Because you're like, well, taking in consideration if, let's say the rest of your classmates are customers, right? We're consumers here of some sort of knowledge or learning experience. Do you make it simple for them to understand, or do you make it more complex for them to understand? Thus, do they, get your product or what you're selling up here? You know what I mean? Like, do they even capture your explanation of what you're talking about? So like adapting all this stuff as a philosophy is really, I think, the big idea. As we talk more about lean systems, is really a philosophy. It's kind of like some companies have that philosophy, some companies don't. Some people have it as their personal philosophy, and they're like, hey, I'm highly efficient, like my life is highly efficient. I think about where to go, how much time, how to present to people in the most simplest terms. So try to think about this as adopting like a personal philosophy, because it takes individuals to run corporations. So obviously someone had to adopt the philosophy to make it effective. But yeah, Uncle Morgan's Barbecue, have at it.
Alright, so what we're going with is pretty much, as I mentioned in the last class, was about, or last time I was up here, was about doing a food truck instead of having an actual restaurant. So some of these sectors will kind of overlap with each other. So for planning, you got budget planning, recipes, schedules, which includes employees who are working, as well as location and times for the food truck. Suppliers, where to get the meat from and other ingredients. Permits for where the truck can go, and planning for how many employees you want to have. For the design, it'll be design of the food truck, the whole branding. You kind of want to have a map of locations, so it'll be kind of where you want to go and when, and kind of design the menu. You want to have a website as well, that way people can find your information and like look more into it before they go to the food truck, so design that, as well as social media. And events, so location planning, as already mentioned. There's a bunch of local food truck events where they just have food trucks, all different types, come to one big parking lot. You can go between all of those, so maybe get involved in some of those, as well as possibly festivals. So two ones that I was researching was Winnie City Smokeout and the Illinois Barbecue Fest, and maybe even get involved in barbecue competitions. And for safety, you got permits, make sure the truck is up to code, the food quality, licensing, and for licensing, that's business and driver's license, so you can drive the truck. And for marketing, kind of this is stuff that's already mentioned, so the website, promotions, social media, so if you don't use the social media, post locations or events where you're gonna be at, as well as keep up with that brand imaging, and maybe even adapt a loyalty program.
Awesome. Great. You're right. It's clear, it's concise, it's straight to the point, it's well thought out. Any questions? Now, just looking at it, how do some of these columns overlap, the items in the columns like this? Do you see where certain things overlap with one another?
Yeah, so with like the safety and like the planning, kind of you have the permits, and with marketing, it kind of goes with the design of the branding as well as like the events and all that, like where you're gonna be at. So kind of just all intermixes with one another.
Okay, cool. Is there anything you feel like, potentially you left out? Like after you constructed this, was there anything that popped in your mind like, oh, I should have added that as well too?
Not really, no.
Okay, and this goes to food truck, not the.
Yeah, we're staying with the food truck now instead of the restaurant.
Okay, excellent, I like it.
Thank
You
you.
very much.
I put the logo in the bottom.
Yeah,
right
I
hand.
like that, nice touch. Now, for those of you who will, be presenting yours later on, think about maybe shortening it, to maybe one page, right? One design, get straight to the point, easy to see, and that way it doesn't complicate for the people out there, to be like, oh, you kinda lost me at that point, this point, go back to page 2, 3, whatever. But yeah, this is excellent, this is simple, and you can always add to this because you'll get more detailed and more refined as time goes on.
And I used Canva to create it, cause they had a bunch of templates on there, so I just went and like added
Oh, you
more
just
lines
filled
or
in.
take some out, yeah.
Also Canva, alright,
Yeah,
so
that's all I
those
got
of you
the
haven't
design.
done yours, I guess Canva could be a good option, cause I know a lot of people didn't wanna purchase a Microsoft program for it. Alright, cool, who else? Who got their work breakdown structure that wanna come show us? Who's done with theirs? Who else is done, besides the people who've already presented? Anybody? You guys done? Any of you guys? Any of you guys done? You're done with yours? Anybody wanna come talk? Or email it to me and I pull it up?
I can.
Okay, email it to me and I'll bring it up. John is done as well too.
I already presented mine, remember mine was the one that got messed up.
Yeah, you did yours, okay. You got mine, last class. So is Uncle Morgan, is that the official name or is you just
Yeah.
kinda use that, alright? Alright, let me know when you sent the, when you sent it.
I think it's
You sent it?
yeah.
Okay. Alright, so we got Netflix.
Just plus.
Netflix Plus.
So the first one is marketing and promotion with developing a marketing and promotion plan for each event. Create event advertisement and materials can go away through different social media brochures or posting posters or whatever, and execute marketing information activities. The following one is event production, so secure event location. As said, what I was presenting, each event will have its own location with special team. So yeah, we need to find those locations and secure them, of course. Design and build event spaces. Each location will be themed and will have some special decorations, so we need some kind of people to do that. To set up and as well to design those. Source and purchase event materials and supplies, so this goes along. Hire and train event staff, so of course there will be like some actors and stuff in some events, so we will brief them before and make probably some repetition before the event goes on, so this part the event production. Then I have event concept development with research potential Netflix shows and movies workable. So the whole catalog of Netflix is not unfortunately workable. I said workable. It's like sometimes there's really an interesting show that have many fans, but it will be too hard to take it to reality and work with like a project that works, you know. So then we have brainstorm event concepts. So yeah, many brains can like create great content, great ideas. Develop detailed event concepts. So yeah, it goes with the brainstorming. And of course-
Your team is brainstorming?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we need Netflix approval. So I said Netflix obtain Netflix approval for event concept. As we are probably gonna work on Netflix, I think we will need some kind of answer before making the event, of course, as we represent their brand and their story. Project planning and preparation, define project objective and scope. So each time we have an event, we need to set up objectives and see how it goes. Gather requirement and constraint. This like goes with defining project objective. For each event, there will be some positive aspect of it, but as well as negative. So we need to be aware of that. Develop project plan and schedule. Secure necessarily resource and approve these.
Approvals?
Approvals, yeah, sorry. That's approvals. So yeah. Then event operation, we have coordinate event logistic, conduct event rehearsal, manage event day operations. And the last one is evaluation close out. So after each event we will need some time to say what went fine, what didn't, so that we can improve for the next time. And I said evaluate event success and gather feedback, so maybe doing some
Survey.
yeah, sorry, exactly. Survey to the customers. Document event lesson learned so that we can improve for the next time. And close out project and release resources.
Thank you. Good job. Questions? Now let me ask you, what order is this going in? Is this in the order you just presented?
No, it is not. I would say first event concept development. Then probably project planning and preparation.
You don't think that comes first? Between those two, which would come
This one, I think.
first? Okay.
Like to go up with ideas,
Yeah.
and then to like kind of plan them to
Yeah.
see if it's workable.
Okay.
Then I would say like this one, those like goes along like at the same time. Then this one, and yeah, sorry, something more.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's it. That's fine. All right, great. Yeah, I don't have any questions. I think I did an excellent job. Yeah, once again, one page, simple, concise, color coded. think of all these things, right? Think of color coordination, you know, maybe indicating the actual process sequence in which way it goes. I like how you labeled it out in sort of, almost like a work plan or something like a manufacturing process. Anybody else? Anybody else wanna come up here and show us their work breakdown structure? No, no volunteers. Did you finish, for the installation? Alright, well, try to wrap up like Wednesday, so we can have more people come up here and show what they got. Okay. All right, so we left out talking more about lean processing, right? Lean management systems and lean systems and all these things that will work. And we say where this ideology philosophy comes from, what company primarily? Who has perfected this philosophy? What company has perfected this? Not Honda, close. Yeah. What company has perfected this?
Toyota?
Toyota, right? So you're thinking of lean systems, you're thinking of Toyota. Toyota has perfected this. This is how they're able to make the most reliable cars, alongside, I would say, with Honda, both Japanese, right? Car manufacturers. And it's typically an ideology. It's a philosophy, right? So after World War II, obviously we know how that happened with Japan, sort of the outcomes, right? Japan was pretty devastated, right? We dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan. Their country was pretty devastated. They had a lot of issues gathering resources, building back up companies, sustaining their populations. And so they had a lack of resources for steel and other things that were necessarily necessity for building things. And so one of the founders of Toyota, originally he operated another business, but his son started working in manufacturing automobiles, and it was a very, very slow process for him, right? He wanted to see how it was done in the United States. Obviously at that time, the Ford Motor Company was the largest manufacturer of vehicles. So they came over to observe the assembly lines in Ford, up in Michigan. They said, oh, this is a great process in what you use. We like how this is done. They noticed some big things that stood out though. One of them is that Ford held a lot of inventory to build these cars. So basically Ford just ordered a ton of different parts, let them kind of hang around in the facility, and had these assembly lines to work, right? To build the vehicles. And then so the Japanese observed and said, wow, this is great. This is a great facility you have, but it's highly inefficient, right? We are always thinking as Japanese in order to make anything more better, more efficient as a group, right? Because of this collectivistic society. So taking that approach, we'll watch a video on how that kind of shaped, a short video, how that kind of shaped the automobile industry itself, and how it all happened. Let me pull that up.
so well, it became the first company to produce more than 10 million a year. Its success is rooted in a special system and began what's now known as lean manufacturing, an ethos emulated by companies around the world to make products faster, cheaper, and better. Here's how Toyota changed the way we make things. Following the Second World War, Japan was left in a precarious economic position.
Steel and other metals are scarce.
Already disadvantaged by lacking natural resources, materials were hard to come by, and companies had to be creative to compete. Toyota's founder, Sekiichi Toyoda, had started a loom business, but it was his son Kiichiro who founded the motor company in 1937. They were used to working within narrow margins. As the shortage of materials increased during the war, the number of headlamps on its Model K truck was reduced to one, and it only had brakes on one of the axles. The turning point for Toyota's production system would come in the early 50s, when Kiichiro's cousin Eiji would travel to the US with a veteran loom machinist, Taiichi Ono. They visited Ford's River Rouge plant in Michigan and were impressed by the scale of the operation, but knew that in cash-strapped Japan, companies didn't have the resources for such a system. Having months' worth of stock sitting in a warehouse would tie up precious capital they didn't have. Instead, what truly impressed Ono was a visit to a supermarket, the Piggly Wiggly, according to legend. Japan didn't really have self-service stores at this point, and he was struck by the way customers could choose exactly what they wanted, when they wanted. He decided to model his production line on a similar idea. With the supermarket formula, only enough parts were produced in the first phase to replace what was used in the second, and so on. This is where the just-in-time system really took shape. Toyota was able to eliminate much of the waste in Ford's system, making smaller numbers of parts to be used when it needed them, allowing the company to operate on a tighter budget. As part of this, Ono developed Kanban, a sign-based scheduling method which shows goods in production, and goods out. It's now seen as a precursor to barcodes. Ono and Toyota also noticed that American car companies were still employing many of Henry Ford's early production techniques. They kept operations at full tilt in order to maximize efficiencies of scale, but then had to repair defective cars after they rolled off the line. Ono believed this caused more problems and didn't encourage workers or machines to stop making the mistake. So he placed a cord above every station which any worker could pull to stop the entire assembly if they spotted a problem. The whole team would work on it to prevent it from happening again. As teams identified more problems, the number of errors began to drop dramatically. Combined with a culture of continuous incremental improvement called Kaizen, the Toyota production system built a brand known for making reliable and affordable cars. But Toyota was also getting good at producing cars quickly. In 1962, the company had produced 1 million vehicles. By 1972, they'd produced 10 million. It was around that time that the efficiencies of their factories enabled Toyota to produce a car every 1.6 man-hours, much lower than their competitors in the US, Sweden, and Germany. And as the oil crises of the decade sent gas prices higher, cheap-to-run Japanese cars became much more appealing to Americans, whose powerful but gas-guzzling vehicles suddenly became very expensive to run. Today, Toyota has made over 250 million vehicles. Others have looked to them to learn the lessons of lean, combining craft with mass production, avoiding waste while striving for constant improvement. Boeing is perhaps the most famous, restructuring a plant to better suit TPS. Intel is another long-time lean ambassador and is exploring the principles in the context of AI and the Internet of Things. A Canadian hospital even used Toyota's system to decrease wait times in its ER. The Toyota production system changed not just how cars are made globally, but how we approach making things full stop. It also showed that there's always a better way to make a product.
Alright, so what are some observations from that video? What are some takeaways? What did you learn? How does Toyota beat its competitors? By, yes.
They pre-launched the errors in the production before the errors occurred.
Yeah. So attacking problems as they occur. What else did you hear? Yes.
Because they visited Ford and saw how they did things, that mine was taking quickly the observations. They pretty much took something that they thought was great, but asked what they can improve on it, and that's how they came up with their systems, pretty much.
Yes. They spotted something and say, hey, here's a market leader out in that industry. Maybe the people don't have a lot of options. So obviously they didn't go with the car, with the Ford car, right? But they're observing today, Ford is highly wasteful. They could be making a ton of more money, producing a ton of more cars. Not only that, a ton of more reliable cars, which will ultimately will affect your brand, will affect your reputation, so on and so forth. What else? What else did you hear? Yeah.
They had a system for organizing parts, like what was inventory, what was like gonna be used, and what was coming in, so they knew exactly how much of things they needed, when they needed it, instead of just stockpiling things.
Yeah, they had a systematic classification system available for everything that was coming in and going out, right? So it shortens the time, the lead times to get those things in place. One of the other things that you didn't notice is they said how they were applied that to the cost of the vehicles. Being that they started out using scarce resources, right? That they learned to make an affordable car as opposed to their competitors. One is affordable, one is way more reliable, and the one is actually more fuel efficient, right? So it said this Ford was making more gas guzzling vehicles. You think about that for a second, you say, okay, two things, right? Either Ford was highly inefficient, or Ford was conspiring with the oil companies so that more money could be going to Toyota, right? Typically, that's kind of how it works. It's like conspiring. Thus, government always have to get in. A lot of kickbacks and stuff. But yeah, a more fuel efficient vehicle. So obviously your customer will see this as some sort of value added to their purchase. The reputation will be strengthened, and overall, now you have what Toyota offers today. In the people's mind, Toyota and Honda are superior for reliability. So if you're gonna buy a car, especially if this is a used car, people say, man, get you a Honda, get you a Toyota, right? So they're not gonna tell you to get a Ford. One of the most unreliable vehicles, and I've owned a couple of them, I say the most unreliable, but probably the most gorgeous SUV is Range Rover. Range Rover is the most, I'd probably say the most gorgeous SUV. The British do not adopt this system. That's not what they're about, right? Different countries, different philosophies. The British are about differentiation. Aston Martin, Bentley, Rolls Royce, right? My favorite one, which is a Morgan. Maybe I'll show you what that looks like. Beautiful. So they're aesthetically to make beautiful vehicles. How reliable they are, probably the worst of all time. And they cost a lot of money too, by the way. You were gonna say something?
I was gonna ask, so then do you think that Toyota got lucky with the increase in gas prices? Like, would they still be in this position today if like gas prices never went up? Because I know I've seen a video before where like people would have this sort of like patriotism, like, oh, you're gonna drive a foreign car, not a domestic car. So like without the gas prices, do you think they still would have been as successful?
I'd say it definitely contributed. I wouldn't say it's the entire picture of it, right? Definitely contributed to it, because at the end of the day, if fuel prices go up, we say this alters human behavior, right? In which case, all we're talking about here, if you zoom out, you say, well, what are we talking about? Lean systems, all this stuff, like how to navigate human behavior based on some changes you as an owner or manager make. You can change the way people think about things, change the way how quickly they do something, how ineffective they do something, how efficient. So yes, in the minds of most, gas, fuel efficiency matters. You know, because the average person, right, this average working person, that will help hurt their bottom line, right, feed their families and stuff like that. What else, any other observations? Who here owns a Toyota? Come on, don't be shy. What do you got? How do you feel about the vehicle?
It's an old one, but like, my dad like fixed up the engine and stuff, and it's been running for like 12 years.
Why did your dad choose? Your dad bought the Toyota original? Why did he choose Toyota?
Cause it's reliable.
Huh?
Cause it's reliable.
Yes, right? Who else? Anybody else? You got one, or you're just telling him to tell us about it? Who here owns a Honda? What do you got with Honda?
My mom, or my family has an Odyssey.
How do you feel about
Works.
it? It's reliable, right? Maybe it's not meant aesthetically, that's not what they're going for. They're not going for aesthetic. We just said, you're going for aesthetics, what do you buy? You can mostly buy some, you can't, if you can't afford it, you buy Italian, you buy British, right? Things like that. But most people can't afford this. All right, moving on. But the interesting thing that they noticed was from Piggly Wiggly. Anyone here ever shop at Piggly Wiggly?
Yeah.
Anyone here not know what Piggly Wiggly is? I mean, of course you do. You guys have got it. You don't know what Piggly is? You know that? Okay, Piggly Wiggly is a grocery store. They sell a lot of meats, a lot of big canned goods, a lot of really big stuff. So, sort of self-serving store, one of the original first self-serving stores. And so the Japanese noticed like, hey, in this system, you can have everything itemized so well that your workers will be able to identify things really quickly and be able to get them and grab them, right? So you eliminate a lot of waste that way too. On a side note, I was watching, anyone here ever been to Cupertino, California? Apple headquarters, Apple Park? So I was watching a video the other day, right? I've been out there, beautiful place, Apple headquarters. Looks like a giant spaceship out in the middle of Central California, I would say. And Steve Jobs, his ideology was like, well, instead of having separate buildings with different departments to get things done, to create these iPhones, to do the research, we would have something where everyone's connected and shared in the same building, and the movement would be circular, right? He said he observed that the buildings, say here for even Concordia, right? To go from here to that building, okay, I got class over here, I got a park over here, I got to come here. You know, he observed that that was highly inefficient. Sort of this old way of office buildings together. So he created this circular building to make people feel more in tune with one another and feel like each department shares the same space, that it changes the way that people interact and operate. Now some people complain about it, right? Because some of the programmers there, everything's kind of open concept, so even when you work, it's kind of like this. You'd be like, there's 5 different departments of people working here, but they're all in an open concept. Some people complain because it's like, I can't focus, right? But his ideology was more so like, this helps marketing talk to finance department, which talks to research and development, and somehow we will come to even greater results by doing something like that. So, you know, what I'm saying here is this, it's theoretical, it's ideological, but it works for some companies, doesn't work for all. Right? Okay, so back here, Lean Systems, we're talking Toyota, right? Their ideology. So they say, hey, some considerations for process. You need to choose the 5S practices, right? Which is to standardize units, right? To clean things up, make sure everything's nice and neat, right? Well, really here, straight, right? Make things are nice and neat. have a clean space, a clean area, and be able to, standardize here, right? First you wanna sort. So sorting deals with separate needed items for unneeded items, including tools, parts, materials, and paperwork, and discard the unneeded. Now, this is just not manufacturing, this applies to every single business that you could think of, retail, service industry, things of that nature, right? So you go in some places, you're like, hey, things here are completely organized, nothing's really neat. What does that transfer into? From your personal life, you know, you transfer, if your apartment or your room is disorganized, it typically reflects inefficiency, right? Neatly arrange what is left over with a place for everything and everything in its place. Organize the work area so that it's easy to find what is needed. Clean and wash the work area to make it shine. Why would that be important? For any industry. Yes.
Less distractions, like once you actually do start working, you're not like looking over and you see something and like, oh, I gotta go take care of that and then take a break from work.
Yeah, absolutely, right? We say it's purely mental, right? A clean area is something that would affect you mentally, right? If it's clean, you feel like mentally you have a fresh start. When things are dirty, you don't, right? Standardize, establish schedules and methods of performing the cleaning and sorting, which means this has to stay on schedule. Cleaning and sorting has to stay on some sort of schedule. Formalize the cleanliness that results from regularly doing the first 3 S practices so that perpetual cleanliness and the state of readiness are maintained, which is the hard part, right? Sustaining. That's that discipline of saying, how do we keep this going, right? Yes, it can happen once, it can happen twice, but how do you keep maintaining this process to going? So you need it by implementing mechanisms to sustain the gains by involving people and recognizing them through a performance measurement system. So you rate them on performance. Once again, human beings love competition. It's just natural. So you start giving people performance metrics, they will start to look amongst each other and rate each other. They say, I'm a great worker, this is a crappy worker, I'm gonna get rewarded for it, this person will be punished for it, right? All work must be completely specified as to content, sequence, timing, and outcome. Now this sounds a bit, I would say too strict for, I guess, most, I would say American culture. It sounds like, I guess, micromanaging, you may wanna call it. So it may not apply in every culture, right? Different cultures have cultural identity and cultural ideology. So some people may look at this and say, this is micromanaging. I feel that the humans would sort of complain about this and then the work morale would be less. All customer-supplier connections should be direct and unambiguous, right? We just saw direct and unambiguous presentation from the 2 presenters here, right? It's pretty easy to understand and very direct, straight to the point. So simple and direct, all improvements should be made under the guidance of a teacher using the scientific method. We all know the scientific method here? Yeah. How's the scientific method go? We get it, right? Hypothesis, assumptions, research questions, yada, yada, yada. So here's a representation of the house of Toyota, right? Toyota want to make the highest quality, lowest cost, shortest lead times by eliminating wasted time and activity. So we say they've taken on this philosophy of just in time, right? They want things to be around just in time, they don't want things sitting. They don't want a lot of inventory. And then they have a culture of continuous improvement, which means that at each stage that something that seemed like a goal is achieved, the next goal is presented, right? You always are presenting the next goal. So that in the minds of your worker and even your managers, it never stops, right? At the end of the day, maybe you have a superior product, a superior company for that matter. And then we got Jacoda, right, which is manual or automatic line stop, separate operator machine activities, error proofing, visual control, which is basically just addressing problems as they come around. Here we're given the representation of one worker, multiple machines cell. Well, you could say you got multiple workers. Why not have a worker for each machine? Right? Well, you said if you train this person appropriately, it'd be less waste, right? A lot of workers mean a lot more money to have them employed. A lot of workers could also mean a lot more mistakes in this operation. There's a lot of factors to consider. But here we see first one machine, 2, 3, 4, 5 machines, materials coming in, finished goods coming out, and this will go by sequence to sequence, right? So this is just a theoretical model to say this could work potentially for a company, this model based on what's being presented here. So group technology, right? Using groups to solve production line creations, we say, or creating products on a production line. So here in this first one, we got jumble flows without group technology. Shipping and receiving is an exact same area, right? That comes here, goes through all the lathing, we got milling, we got drilling, we got grinding, and then we got final assembly of the finished product and the ship back out, right? This is a little bit highly inefficient because people are gonna be going to different stations based on who's available and ready to take their next sequence, I would say. And here we got group technology with well, line flows of 3 group technology cells, right? So we got receiving and shipping separated, right? So everyone knows when receiving is coming in, there's no confusion mixed up with the shipping that's going out, completely separated. Things are dispersed from line to line to line. Then we got the assembly area separated off here to 2 groups, and finally it's being shipped out. So Kanban means card. Card just means some sort of identifiable report of the necessary thing that has taken place. So any part that's put together, there will be some record of it, right? There will be some sort of recording of what has actually happened. If there was an issue, was the problem, is the step complete or not? And so the Kanban cards are typically put in these, these empty container systems. And each one would contain a card stating what's the next process or if that process has been completed, right? And so they're given here fabrication cell representation, right? 1, 2, 3. And here they're just showing how the cards be filled up to show that, oh, okay, everything's complete and everything's recorded. Therefore, we can identify any problems that have taken place or to know that everything has been completely finished. What time is it? Is that right?
Wait, no.
All right, some operating rules. Each container must have a card. The assembly line always withdraws from the fabrication cell. The fabrication cell never pushes parts to the assembly line because sooner or later, parts will be supplied that are not yet needed for production. Right? Container parts must never be removed from the storage without a Kanban first being posted on the receiving post. The container should always contain the same number of good parts. The use of non-standard containers or regularly filled containers disrupt the production flow, and only non-defective parts should be passed along to the assembly line to make the best use of materials and workers' time, and total production should not exceed the total amount authorized in the Kanban system. Is that understandable? Do you understand how the Kanban works? All right, and determining the number of containers for this Kanban system. Number of units to be held by each container and the number of containers. And then we got Little's Law, right, which is average work in process inventory equals the average demand rate multiplied by the time a unit spends in the manufacturing process, which is just a measurement you can see to see how the system flows and the rate at which it flows. I think I'll end off here, and we'll wrap this chapter up, 'cause I wanna get to the next chapter. Yeah, we'll finish off here, and then we'll come back to, chapter 8 next class. Any questions? All right, everyone.